So, what do we do on Sabbath day, Ada?
We worship.
And what else?
What are ways that we rest?
We sing songs.
Angie?
What are some of your favorite things that we do on Sabbath day?
Baked stuff.
And then eat it for tea time.
And then we eat it for tea time.
Yeah.
Everyone show off your muffins.
Let me see your muffin. Let me see your muffin, Jude. Is that yummy? Hope you enjoy that overview from our daughter Adelaide about what Sabbath looks like for us and for our family. And it just raises the question of, well, what is a Sabbath and why would God command us to do this? So let's look at the text of Scripture where the practice of Sabbath comes from and learn some things about the heart behind it and why it can be so helpful and good if you put it into practice in your life. So this comes from Exodus chapter 20, verses 8 through 11. These are the 10 commandments. And here's what it says. It says, "Remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work, neither you nor your son or daughter, nor your male or female servant, nor your animals, nor any foreigner residing in your towns. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea and all that is in them, but he rested on the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy." So that Hebrew word Shabbat or Sabbath simply means to cease or stop or rest. So God says, one day in every 7, I want you to stop. Now it's interesting because the curriculum we are using right now put the practice of Sabbath into a section that we're in right now called the disciplines. These are the disciplines of disciples. And I actually really appreciate that they put that in this section because I believe that Sabbath is a discipline. Now, what is a discipline in general? A discipline is a practice that you cultivate, and that by doing that thing, it actually helps shape you as a follower of Jesus to become more like Jesus. So how does the discipline of Sabbath accomplish those goals? Well, it works in several ways. For one, the Sabbath day is meant to be a day of worship. It's meant to be a day set apart to spend extra time with God. That will shape you as a follower of Jesus because you're spending more time with Jesus. But secondly, it also shapes us because it's actually a concrete act of trust. And here's what I mean. And to understand this, it helps if you just kind of go put yourself in the shoes, or I guess sandals, of the ancient Israelites. Now imagine you're like a basic agrarian society, planting and harvesting, and that's how you get your food. Like that's your food for the year. And it's harvesting season, and you know if there's rain this next week, some of your harvest is going to be ruined, and you might not make it through winter. And then you realize, oh, but tomorrow's Sabbath. You realize how choosing not to harvest that day is a concrete act of faith and trust. It's a way of saying, I'm going to trust that God will provide. I'm going to trust that he will help me get enough done in the other 6 days that I can take tomorrow off and rest and worship God. So the practice of Sabbath is a discipline. It's something that when we do, it forms us because it helps us spend extra time with God and because it can be a concrete act of faith and trust. And in some ways, it's easier for us today because we don't live in that kind of society. And in some ways, it's harder because we are always connected. Because work is on your phone now. And so it actually can be harder to make ourselves get away. So one of the things we're going to think about in our connection groups is how can we practice Sabbath? How can we take a break from work when we're always connected to it? How do we do that? Now, why would God command this? It's interesting because this is actually in the 10 Commandments. Now, just to be clear, there's debate among Christians about whether or not Sabbath is something we should practice, whether or not that is a law that still follows through for New Testament believers in Jesus. Now, here is my take on all of that. Why wouldn't you do it? Because you have to remember what the heart of the law is in the first place. That basically the law is God's gift to Israel because it's God, the creator, saying, I'm the one who made all of this. I'm the one who made you. And so I know how life works best. So let me tell you, life works best when you pause and you rest and you take a break once every 6 days. See, the point is that God's commands are for our good. And they reveal the way he made this world to work and our bodies to work, so that when we follow God's laws, it is actually for our good. It helps us be more connected with him and with each other and to live better lives. Now, I know, again, not everyone agrees with this whole concept of like, we should practice Sabbath, it's good for us. And here's just a simple test to think about and consider. I just want you to try something. I want you to try to not sleep at all tonight. Okay? Drink a bunch of coffee, stay up late, don't get any sleep tonight. And then tomorrow, I want you to try and practice the fruit of the Spirit. So tonight, don't sleep. Tomorrow, try and be really loving and joyful and patient and kind with everyone you come across. And see how that goes. All right, I'm kind of being a little sarcastic because we all know if you don't get enough sleep, you're not going to be a very loving, joyful, kind person. And what is true of our daily rhythms and our need for sleep and rest is also true of our weekly rhythms. Because again, why? Because God created us this way. This is how he made the world to work. This is how he made us to work. God says, practice a Sabbath every week. He's saying, live this way. This is the best way to live. This is the good way to live. If you do not already practice a Sabbath, I want to encourage you to try this. To practice a Sabbath, to set aside a day this week. And you know what? With all this coronavirus stuff going on, I think this is actually more important because now, for some of us, home is where we work. And it makes it even more so that we're always connected to work and it's hard to get away from work. So what would Sabbath look like for you? And one of the things I want to encourage you to think about is not just how can I be entertained on my Sabbath day, but how can I rest? Here's what I mean. For Janelle and I, we found there are some things we enjoy doing, but they're actually like tiring. For example, we enjoy watching movies, but we found that doesn't actually rejuvenate us. Whereas other activities are actually tiring physically, but they're rejuvenating emotionally. For example, I love rock climbing, right? That is a tiring activity physically, but I feel refreshed afterwards, or going on a walk outside. Now, I think that's probably different for everyone, but I think it's something important to pay attention to. And so I would encourage you to think about, like, what is one thing for you that is tiring in a good way that you could incorporate into your practice of Sabbath? So if you already do this, we would love to hear in our connection groups what you do. How do you practice the Sabbath? And how has this shaped you, right? Because this is not just a gift to be enjoyed, but also a discipline to be practiced, something that shapes us as we do this. And if this is something you don't do, I want you to consider, what if you did do this? How could it shape you and change you? How might you be different in a year if you practice this? Janelle and I actually started practicing this the last semester that I was working on my Master's of Divinity degree. And I just really felt this conviction from God that he wanted me to practice Sabbath. And my honest thought at the time was like, God, this is not a good time for that, because I had a pretty heavy course load. Plus, I was really, really busy with church stuff. I was working with an intern at the time. I was leading worship and students still. It was just crazy busy. Janelle was still working. But I really felt him encouraging us to do it. And it was hard. It really was, for me, many times that semester, a concrete act of faith and trust in God. Because I would work really hard on a paper and be like, I need more time to make this a really good paper. And I don't have it. Tomorrow's our Sabbath. So I'm going to submit it and entrust that to God. And you know what, guys? I got pretty good grades. My GPA really didn't suffer. But what's more, I realized I could depend on God through those times. It formed me. It shaped me as someone who trusts God just a little bit more with their everyday life. And also, Janelle and I had a lot of fun. We loved our days off together and enjoying each other. And so much so that we have never stopped since that time practicing Sabbath. That was in 2013, and here we are today, and we are passing this practice on to our kids. So my heart and my passion is that I want you to experience this. We love our Sabbath days, and I want you to come up with something that you would love to do with yourself or with your family. And I believe that this could shape you. This will help you spend more time with Jesus, and I think at the end of the day, it could help you become more like Jesus. So, when are you going to Sabbath, and what are you going to do?